The street was almost empty. The night air heavy with silence, Daniel walked home slowly. His shoulders tired after a long day of work. His shoes hit the cracked pavement with a soft sound, echoing between the tall buildings that leaned over the narrow road. He was thinking about nothing important, just about food, sleep, and maybe watching some late-night news, when suddenly he heard a voice. It was weak, trembling, like someone trying not to cry but failing. He stopped, his eyes searching for the source. Under a broken streetlight stood a figure. At first, Daniel thought it was just another homeless person, but when the figure raised its head, he saw the truth. It was an alien woman, her face hidden under layers of dirt and dust. Her clothes were torn, her hair matted, and her skin had a strange glow, faint but still noticeable even under the dim light. She stepped forward carefully as if afraid he would run away. Her hands shook as she held out 3 wrinkled human dollars. Her voice cracked as she spoke. "I only have $3. Please let me shower at your home, human." Daniel froze. His heart raced in confusion. He had seen aliens before, of course. They lived in the city like everyone else, but never like this. Never so broken, never so desperate. Most aliens were proud, powerful. Some even looked down on humans, but this one looked like she had fallen into a nightmare she could not escape. He looked around quickly. The street was empty, but the shadows felt heavier now. Was anyone watching? Could this be a trap? He had heard stories, aliens using pity to lure humans, to rob them or worse, yet her eyes told another story. They were wide, glowing faintly, filled with pain and shame. Daniel's voice came out rough. "Why me? There are shelters, there are places." She shook her head fast, her dirty hair falling into her face. "No one lets me in. They say I smell. They say I'm worthless. I just need water, clean water. Just one shower." Her voice broke again, and she lowered her head as if already preparing for him to refuse. Daniel swallowed hard. His mind screamed at him to walk away, to keep his door locked, to not get involved. Yet his feet didn't move. Something about her voice, her trembling hands holding those $3, stopped him. She wasn't lying. He could feel it in his chest. This was not a trick. It was a cry for help. But still, why him? Why tonight? He glanced at her hands. The 3 human dollars looked like treasure in her grip, as if she thought it was enough to buy safety. His stomach turned. What kind of life had she lived if $3 was all she had left? The streetlight flickered again. For a moment her face became clear. Her cheeks were thin, her lips cracked, and yet beneath the dirt there was a hint of something more. Something fragile, something lost. She wasn't just dirty. She was broken. Daniel sighed, rubbing his face. "You understand how dangerous this is, right? If people see me taking you home..." She lifted her eyes quickly, glowing brighter now with desperation. "Please, just one shower. I'll leave after." I swear, her words were simple, but they hit him hard. In them was no trick, no plan, only truth. A truth so heavy it pulled at his chest. He finally nodded, though fear twisted in his gut. "All right, come with me." Her breath caught. Her hands dropped to her chest as if she couldn't believe it. Slowly she followed him. Her steps were light, weak, but each one carried a strange weight, like every movement was a battle against exhaustion. As they walked toward his apartment, Daniel's senses sharpened. Every corner felt dangerous, every shadow seemed alive. He couldn't shake the feeling that by letting her follow him, he had stepped into something much bigger than himself. When they reached his building, she hesitated at the door, looking around as though expecting someone to jump out. Daniel noticed too. The street behind them seemed too quiet, too still. He pushed the door open and motioned her inside. She looked at him with wide eyes, then quickly stepped in. Clutching the $3 tightly, Daniel closed the door and leaned against it. His heart still racing, he had no idea what he had just done. All he knew was that this was not the end. This was the beginning. And whatever came next, he was now part of it. Daniel's apartment was small, just 2 rooms and a kitchen. But to the alien woman it looked like a palace. She stepped inside slowly, her dirty feet making faint marks on the wooden floor. Her glowing eyes moved around nervously, as if she expected him to throw her out at any moment. Daniel locked the door behind them. The sound of the lock turning made her flinch. She hugged herself tightly, her body trembling. Daniel noticed it and raised his hands quickly. "Relax, I'm not going to hurt you," he said. His voice was calm, but inside his chest his heart was beating fast. She gave a weak nod, still not fully trusting. Daniel wondered what had happened to her. What kind of pain made her so afraid of a simple lock? He pointed toward the small couch in the living room. "Sit." You look like you're about to fall over. She moved carefully, almost like a wounded animal, and sat down at the very edge of the couch. She kept clutching the $3 in her hands. Pressing them against her chest, Daniel shook his head softly. It broke him inside to see how much those useless bills meant to her. For a moment, silence filled the room. Daniel leaned against the wall. Staring at her, she was an alien, yes, but not like the others he had seen. Normally, they walked with pride. Their voices strong, their posture tall, but this woman was different. She was tired, broken, and scared. Finally, he spoke. "What's your name?" She hesitated, her lips parting, but no words came. After a long pause, she whispered, "Liara." Her voice was faint, but the sound of it carried something heavy. Daniel repeated it softly, testing the name on his tongue. "Liara." She looked at him quickly, eyes wide, as if surprised he said it without mocking. Then she lowered her head again, hiding her face. Daniel walked to the kitchen and poured a glass of water. He set it down on the table near her. She stared at it as if it was a treasure. Then with shaking hands, she lifted the glass and drank. Her throat moved fast as the water disappeared. She finished in seconds and set the glass down carefully, her hands trembling. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice cracked. Daniel sat on the chair across from her, folding his arms. "Why me?" he asked. "There are other humans, other homes. Why did you stop me?" Liara's lips pressed together tightly. Her eyes moved around the room like she was searching for the right words. Finally, she said, "Because you looked kind. Everyone else just looked away. They covered their noses. They called me dirty trash. They laughed." She stopped, her voice breaking. "But you looked at me." Daniel felt a chill run down his spine. He had not realized how much his simple glance mattered. He thought of all the times he had ignored people on the street. But tonight he had looked, and because of that, she had chosen him. Still, he felt uneasy. "You understand, don't you? If someone finds out you're here, I could be in serious trouble." Liara nodded quickly. "I won't stay. I promise, just one shower, then I'll leave. You'll never see me again." Her words should have made him feel better, but instead they made him feel worse. Why? Why did the idea of her leaving twist something in his chest? He studied her quietly. The dirt on her skin covered scars, old and new. Her thin frame showed she hadn't eaten properly in weeks. Maybe longer. She wasn't just dirty, she was starving, broken, abandoned. Daniel sighed deeply, rubbing his forehead. "All right. The bathroom is through that door. You can shower as long as you need." Liara stood up slowly, clutching the $3 tighter. She looked at him nervously. "Do I pay you now?" Daniel blinked in shock. "What?" "No, I don't want your money." Her eyes filled with tears immediately. She looked down at the wrinkled bills, then back at him. "But everyone always asks for money, even for water." Daniel felt his throat tighten. He pushed her hand away gently. "Not here. Not with me." Liara's lips trembled, and she nodded for the first time since he met her. Her shoulders loosened a little. It was as if a small part of the weight she carried had fallen. She walked toward the bathroom door, but before going in, she turned back. Her glowing eyes met his. "Why are you helping me?" she asked softly. Daniel had no answer. He wanted to say it was nothing, that it was just pity, but deep down he knew it wasn't. Something inside him had decided. Something he couldn't explain. He only said, "Because no one else did." Liara stared at him for a moment longer, then slowly pushed the bathroom door open. The sound of running water soon filled the apartment. Daniel sat back in his chair, staring at the door. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but he knew one thing. His life had just changed. Outside, the night was quiet, but not safe. In the shadows beyond his window, movement stirred. Figures watched the small apartment, silent and waiting. The sound of water echoed through the small apartment. Daniel sat in his chair, staring at the bathroom door. He had offered her a shower, but now that she was inside, he felt restless. His hands tapped the wooden table, his mind running in circles. Who was she really? Why did she look so broken, so desperate? And why did his heart feel so heavy just thinking about her? Inside the bathroom, Liara stood frozen at first. The steam rose around her, and she placed her hands under the running water. Her fingers trembled as she felt the warmth. Her glowing eyes widened. She had almost forgotten what clean water felt like. Her throat tightened, and before she could stop herself, tears slid down her cheeks. She undressed slowly, every movement shaky. The water hit her skin, washing away layers of dirt. The dust and grime slid down the drain, revealing scars carved deep into her arms and back. She touched them softly, remembering pain she wanted to forget. The shower water mixed with her tears, carrying both dirt and sorrow away. Outside, Daniel leaned forward, hearing faint sobs through the door. He closed his eyes, guilt crawling into his chest. Whatever she had gone through, it was worse than anything he had imagined. He felt like an intruder listening to her grief. But he couldn't move away. His heart wouldn't let him. Minutes passed, then the sobs stopped. Replaced by silence, Daniel stood up and paced. He imagined her collapsing from weakness. He almost knocked on the door, but then the sound of water splashing again reassured him. She was still there, still fighting. Liara finally stepped out of the shower, wrapping herself in the towel he had given her. She looked into the small mirror above the sink. For the first time in weeks, maybe months, she could see herself. Her skin glowed faintly now, her features clearer. The dirt had hidden her true form, and Daniel was about to see it. When she opened the door, Daniel froze. His eyes widened without meaning to. The fragile, broken creature he had brought home was gone. In her place stood someone different, still thin, still scarred, but with a strange beauty that made his chest tighten. Her long hair, wet and heavy, clung to her face. Her skin shimmered faintly under the dim light, as though tiny stars lived beneath her flesh. Her glowing eyes looked brighter, no longer hidden under layers of dust. For a moment, Daniel forgot to breathe. Liara lowered her head quickly. Clutching the towel tightly, she felt ashamed, exposed. She thought he would judge her scars. She thought he would laugh at how weak she looked even after washing. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I didn't mean to trouble you." Daniel blinked and shook his head fast. "No. Don't apologize," his voice cracked. He didn't know why, but he couldn't stand hearing her speak like that. "You don't need to be sorry for needing help." She looked at him, her glowing eyes searching his face, waiting for mockery, but all she saw was sincerity. That made her throat tighten again. Daniel quickly moved to the small closet and pulled out an old shirt and sweatpants. "Here, they might be a little big, but at least they're clean," he said, handing them over. Liara took them slowly, her fingers brushing his for a second. That tiny touch sent a spark through her body. She turned quickly, hiding her face, and went back into the bathroom to change. When she came out again, the oversized clothes hung loosely on her thin frame, but she looked more human now, more alive. She sat back on the couch, her hands resting nervously on her knees. Daniel noticed how she still clutched the $3 in one hand, refusing to let go. "Keep your money," Daniel said softly. "I told you." "I don't want it." Liara shook her head. "I have nothing else if I don't give you this. Then I owe you, and if I owe you, you might hate me later." Daniel frowned. "That's not how it works," he said firmly. "Kindness doesn't need payment." Her glowing eyes filled with confusion. She had never heard words like that. Not from humans, not from aliens, not from anyone, she whispered. Why are you different?" Daniel didn't answer because he didn't know. He only knew that looking at her now, washed and clean, he couldn't let her go back to the streets. Something deep inside told him her story wasn't finished here, not with him. The moment grew heavier when suddenly a noise echoed from outside the window. Both of them froze. Daniel's eyes darted to the glass. He thought he saw movement in the alley below, shadows shifting unnaturally. Liara's face went pale. She whispered quickly, "They're looking for me." Daniel's chest tightened. "Who?" he asked. She shook her head. "Not now, please." "Not yet." Her voice trembled, fear rushing back into her eyes. Daniel clenched his jaw. Whoever they were, they had just turned his life upside down. He glanced at the door, then back at her. He realized bringing her home was not a small act of kindness. It was the start of something dangerous, something he didn't yet understand. Liara curled up on the couch, clutching the towel around her like a shield. Her glowing eyes dimmed with exhaustion. But she whispered one more thing before drifting into uneasy rest. "If they find me here, you'll be in danger too." Daniel stood there, silent, the weight of her words pressing down on him. He didn't know who was out there or why they wanted her. But one thing was clear. This night was only the beginning. The small apartment was quiet, but Daniel could not sleep. He sat by the window, staring out into the dark street. His mind kept replaying Liara's words. "If they find me here, you'll be in danger too." Those words clung to him like a shadow. He wanted to believe it was nothing, maybe just fear, maybe just paranoia, but deep down he knew it was real. On the couch, Liara lay curled up under a blanket. Her glowing eyes were closed, but her body trembled even in sleep. She twitched as if fighting nightmares. Daniel watched her carefully. She was not just another alien woman, not just someone unlucky. She carried something with her, a story that could not be ignored. As the first light of morning crept through the window, Liara stirred. She opened her eyes slowly, her expression confused. For a moment she looked at the blanket covering her, then at Daniel sitting by the window. Her lips parted and she whispered, "You stayed awake." Daniel nodded, his eyes still on the street. "Couldn't sleep," he admitted. "Not after what you said last night." Liara sat up slowly. Pulling the blanket around her shoulders, her hands clutched the fabric tightly, as if afraid he would take it away. She hesitated, then spoke softly. "You deserve to know." Daniel turned toward her. His chest tightening, he said nothing, waiting. Liara's voice was low, shaky, but steady enough to carry her truth. "I was not always like this. Dirty, begging, weak," she began. "I was born in a house of respect. My people called me Daughter of Light. I wore silk robes. I never knew hunger. My world was safe, protected." She paused, her glowing eyes clouded with pain. "But power is never safe for long. Traders came. They called themselves merchants. They smiled as they poisoned our wells. They enslaved my people one by one, and I was taken." Daniel's jaw tightened. He leaned forward, listening carefully. Liara lifted her sleeve slowly, revealing long scars across her arms. "They made me property. They marked me like an animal. They told me no one would ever help me, that even if I escaped, I would be seen as worthless. They told me I was trash." Her voice cracked and she gripped the blanket tighter. Daniel's chest burned. He wanted to shout, to curse the monsters who had done this, but he stayed quiet, letting her speak. "I escaped," she whispered, "but not alone. I ran with others. Friends, sisters. We thought we were free, but the hunters followed. They killed some, took the others back. I kept running, I kept hiding, until finally, I was the only one left." Her glowing eyes filled with tears. "When I came to this city, I thought maybe humans would see me differently. But they didn't. They covered their noses. They spat, they laughed. They treated me just like the hunters said they would. That's why I had only $3 left. That's why I begged you." Daniel's throat felt dry. He stood up slowly and walked to her. He wanted to comfort her, but his hands hesitated in the air. Finally, he rested them on the back of the couch, leaning closer. "You're not trash," he said firmly. "You're not worthless." Liara looked at him sharply. Searching his eyes for a long moment, she said nothing. Then her lips trembled and she whispered, "Why do you say that? Why are you different?" Daniel shook his head. "Because it's true." For the first time, a faint smile flickered on her face, small and fragile but real. Yet the moment didn't last. A sudden knock on the door shattered the silence. Boom, boom, boom. The sound was heavy, sharp. Not the knock of a neighbor. Daniel froze, his blood turning cold. He glanced at Liara and saw her face pale instantly. Her glowing eyes widened in fear. "They found me," she whispered. Daniel's heart pounded. "Who?" he demanded. Liara's lips trembled. "The hunters." The knocking came again, louder this time. The door rattled against its frame. Daniel's instinct screamed at him to stay quiet, not to answer. But the voice that followed made his stomach drop. It was deep, harsh, filled with authority. "Open the door, human. Hand over the runaway, and no harm will come to you." Liara covered her mouth with her hand. Her whole body shaking, Daniel looked at her. Then at the door, his mind raced. He had a choice: betray her and save himself, or keep her hidden and risk everything. He took a deep breath, then he whispered to her, "Stay quiet, don't move." The knocking turned into pounding. The hunters outside grew impatient, their voices sharp. "Human, we know she's inside. Do not test us." Daniel's hands clenched into fists, sweat ran down his forehead. He had never imagined his simple act of kindness would lead to this. Yet here he was, standing between a frightened alien woman and the monsters who wanted to take her. The pounding stopped, silence fell. Daniel leaned against the wall, heart hammering. Then a final voice came, cold and promising. "You cannot hide her forever. We will be back." Footsteps faded. The street grew quiet again, but the silence was heavy. Dangerous. Daniel turned back to Liara. Her glowing eyes were wide with tears. "I told you," she whispered. "Now you're in danger too." Daniel walked to her slowly, his jaw tight, his eyes steady. Then we face it together, he said. Liara stared at him, stunned. No one had ever spoken to her like that. No one had ever chosen to stand with her. Her chest ached, but for the first time, it wasn't just pain, it was hope. The morning air was heavy inside Daniel's apartment. Neither he nor Liara spoke for a long time after the pounding on the door stopped. Daniel sat with his hands pressed against his knees. His heart still thundering in his chest, Liara sat on the couch. Holding the blanket so tightly it looked like her only shield, she whispered at last. They know. They will come again. Daniel rubbed his face. Who are they exactly? He asked. His voice was calm, but inside he felt the weight of fear. Liara swallowed, her glowing eyes flickering toward the door as if she could still hear the hunters outside. They are slavers, bounty hunters, trackers, she said. They work for the traders I escaped from. They can smell fear. They can find me anywhere. Daniel stood up and paced. His small apartment suddenly felt smaller, the walls pressing in on him. He stopped and faced her. If they are that dangerous, then why didn't you keep running? Liara lowered her head. I was too tired, too weak. I thought maybe here in this human city they would not dare come. She looked at him with tears in her eyes. I was wrong. Daniel's fists clenched. He felt anger rise inside him. Not at her, but at the world that had forced her into this. He wanted to protect her, but the hunters were not simple thieves or bullies. They were trained, armed, and merciless. The silence was broken again, this time by a faint scratching sound against the window. Daniel turned quickly, his stomach dropped. A shadow moved across the glass, tall and sharp. Liara gasped and pulled the blanket over her head, whispering, They're already back. Daniel rushed to the window and peeked through the edge of the curtain. His breath caught. Down on the street stood 3 figures. They wore black armor that shimmered like oil under the weak sunlight. Their helmets had red slits for eyes, glowing faintly. Each carried a strange weapon across their back. Weapons Daniel had never seen before but knew were deadly. One of the hunters lifted his head, as if sensing Daniel's gaze for a terrifying moment. Daniel thought the hunter was looking straight at him. He dropped the curtain and stepped back. They're waiting, Liara whispered. They'll circle the building. They never give up. Daniel grabbed his phone instinctively, his finger hovering over the call button for the police. But then he stopped. Would the human police even help? Would they even believe him if he said alien hunters were stalking his apartment? Or worse, what if they handed Liara over themselves? He turned back to her. We can't stay here, he said. His voice was steady now. If they know where you are, this place isn't safe anymore. Liara shook her head fast. No, if you leave with me, they'll mark you too. They'll hunt you as well. Daniel looked at her seriously. They already marked me the moment I opened my door last night. Her glowing eyes widened. She wanted to argue, but the truth was too heavy. She lowered her gaze, guilt pressing down on her chest. I never wanted this for you, she whispered. I only wanted water. Daniel knelt in front of her, his eyes level with hers. You asked me for help, and I gave it. That doesn't change now. Before Liara could reply, a new sound shook the apartment. A loud metallic clang echoed from below. The hunters had entered the building. Their boots struck the stairs like hammers. Slow and certain, Liara's breath came fast. Her hands shaking, Daniel grabbed her wrist, pulling her toward the back door that led into the alley. We move now, he whispered. They slipped into the narrow hallway. Daniel's heart pounding so hard he could barely hear anything else. Every creak of the floor felt like thunder. He pushed open the back door, the cold air hitting them sharply. But the alley was not empty. 2 hunters were already there, waiting. Their red eyes glowed under their helmets. One raised his weapon slowly, his voice deep and mechanical. Hand her over, human. She is marked. She is not yours to keep. Daniel stepped in front of Liara without thinking. His arms spread wide. She's not yours either, he shouted. His voice cracked, but he stood firm. The hunter tilted his head. You are weak? You cannot fight us, Daniel's throat tightened. He had no weapon, no armor, no plan. All he had was his will. He glanced back at Liara. Her glowing eyes burned with fear, but also something else. Anger. She stepped forward, her hand brushing against his arm. A faint light flickered from her skin. Leave us, she said, her voice trembling but filled with power. Or you will regret it. The hunters paused, surprised. The red glow in their helmets flickered for a second. Daniel turned to Liara, shocked. She was not just a runaway, not just a slave. There was something hidden in her, something even the hunters seemed to fear. One of the hunters lowered his weapon slightly. Growling, She still carries it, he muttered. Then louder, we will return, and next time, oh, human will save you. The two hunters stepped back into the shadows, disappearing as quickly as they had appeared. Daniel exhaled sharply, his knees almost giving out. Liara leaned against him, her body weak but her eyes still glowing faintly. He held her steady, his mind spinning. Still carries what? He asked, his voice urgent. Liara looked at him, her lips pressed together. Finally she whispered, my secret, the reason they will never stop hunting me. Daniel swallowed hard. His life had already changed the moment he opened his door. But now, standing in the alley with her, he realized something deeper. He was no longer just helping her survive. He was standing in the middle of a battle much larger than himself, and there was no turning back. The alley was silent again, but Daniel's heart refused to calm. He could still hear the heavy footsteps of the hunters fading into the distance. Every sound of the city felt louder, the drip of water from a pipe, the distant hum of traffic, even the faint rustle of trash in the wind. Liara leaned against him, her breathing uneven. The glow in her eyes dimmed as exhaustion took over. Daniel held her steady, his hand gripping her shoulder. For the first time since last night, he realized how fragile she truly was. Her body was weak, trembling with hunger and fear. He guided her back inside through the rear stairwell. Every step creaked, and Daniel half expected the hunters to burst through the doors again. But they didn't, not yet back in his apartment. Liara collapsed onto the couch. Daniel brought her a glass of water and the last piece of bread he had. She looked at it with hesitation. You're giving me your food, she whispered. Almost ashamed, Daniel sat beside her. And you're going to eat it, he said firmly. Don't argue. Her lips trembled before she nodded slowly. She ate in small bites, her glowing eyes never leaving his face. It was as if she was trying to understand why he was doing this, why he cared at all after a long silence. She spoke, her voice low. No one has ever stood for me. Not even my own people. When the traitors came, they looked away, pretending not to see. Her fingers touched the scars on her arms. I thought kindness was a lie. Daniel leaned back, his eyes fixed on the ceiling. Kindness isn't a lie. It's just rare, he said quietly. And sometimes, it costs more than we think. Liara studied him closely. Why risk yourself? Why not hand me over? You would be safe now. Daniel turned to her, his expression sharp. Safe? You think I could live with myself knowing I threw you back to those monsters? That's not safety, that's cowardice. Her glowing eyes widened, and for a moment she forgot to breathe. Something about his words struck her deeply. She had lived so long believing no one would ever choose her over themselves. And yet here was a human, an ordinary man, speaking like her life mattered. She whispered, You're strange, Daniel. He smiled faintly. I get that a lot. For the first time. Liara laughed softly. It was small, weak, but real. The sound surprised them both. She covered her mouth quickly, embarrassed. I haven't laughed in years, she admitted. Daniel's chest tightened. He wanted to protect that fragile sound, to make sure she would laugh again. The moment was broken by the faint rumble of thunder outside. A storm was brewing. Shadows from the window stretched across the floor. Daniel looked out carefully, but the street was empty. At least for now, he turned back to Liara. You said they hunt you because of something you carry. What is it? Her eyes lowered and she wrapped the blanket tighter around herself. For a long time, she said nothing. Then finally, her voice came out soft but steady. It's not something I carry in my hands. It's something inside me, my blood, my power. My birthright, Daniel frowned. What do you mean? Liara met his gaze, her glowing eyes steady now. I was not just a daughter of light, I was meant to lead my people. My bloodline carries an energy, a connection to the stars. It makes me dangerous to those who want control. The traitors didn't just want slaves, they wanted me. They wanted to use me as a weapon. That's why the hunters never stop. Daniel leaned back slowly. The weight of her words settled heavy on his chest. He finally understood why she was so valuable, why the hunters risked everything to chase her even into human cities. She wasn't just a runaway, she was a prize. Liara lowered her head. If you keep me here, they will destroy everything around you to take me back. I should leave before that happens. Daniel stood quickly, his voice sharp. No, don't say that. He walked closer and crouched in front of her, his eyes locked onto hers. You're not alone anymore, you hear me? If they want you, they'll have to go through me first. Her eyes filled with tears, but not from fear this time. Her hands shook as she reached out slowly, almost afraid to touch him, then finally, her fingers brushed against his hand. "Why?" she whispered. "Why do you care so much?" Daniel squeezed her hand gently. "Because you deserve someone who does." Her tears spilled over. She covered her face, crying softly. Daniel didn't move away. He stayed by her side, letting her cry, letting her release the years of pain she had carried alone. The storm outside grew louder, rain tapping against the window. Thunder rolled like distant drums. Daniel glanced at the sky and then back at Liara. He knew the hunters would come again, maybe tonight, maybe tomorrow. But something inside him had changed. He was no longer just protecting her out of pity. He felt a bond forming, something strong, something unexplainable. Liara wiped her face and looked at him again. Her voice was quiet but filled with something new. "If I survive this, it will be because of you." Daniel shook his head. "If we survive, it will be because we stand together." For the first time, Liara smiled without fear. It was small, fragile, but full of light. And Daniel realized that even in the middle of danger, even with hunters waiting in the shadows, hope had found its way into his apartment. And hope was something worth fighting for. The storm outside raged louder, rain slashing against the windows like silver knives. Daniel and Liara sat in silence, listening to the chaos of the city beyond. Every crack of thunder made Liara flinch, but she didn't run this time. She had begun to trust him. Daniel studied her, noticing the subtle glow in her eyes had returned, brighter now, stronger, as if the energy she had hidden for so long was stirring within her. "You'll be okay," he said quietly, trying to sound confident. Though his stomach twisted with unease, Liara nodded. "I feel safer," she admitted softly. "Safer than I ever felt anywhere else." The sound of metal clattering from the street below made them both tense. Daniel's hand went to his pocket, gripping the small tool he always carried, while Liara instinctively crouched, her glowing fingers brushing the floor as if ready to defend herself. Daniel whispered, "They've come." Liara's eyes widened. "I can feel them. The hunters, they're close." Daniel moved to the window, peeking through the rain-streaked glass, but all he could see were shadows moving quickly between the buildings. Quick and precise, they were organized, trained, and ruthless. Just like she had said, he turned back to Liara. "We can't stay here," he said. "They'll tear this place apart if we wait." Liara shook her head. "No, Daniel, you've done so much already. We can't keep running. I can help, but you have to trust me completely." Daniel hesitated, looking at her, seeing the fire in her eyes, the determination that belied her frail appearance. Finally, he nodded. "Okay, I trust you." She stood slowly, brushing the wet strands of hair from her face. "Good," she said. "Then we fight smart." Not blindly. Minutes later, the hunters arrived, crashing into the alley with shouts and weapons, their glowing eyes scanning the windows, their movements synchronized like a deadly dance. Daniel and Liara were ready. Their plan formed in seconds. Born of necessity and desperation, Liara extended her hands. Her energy pulsing outward, the hunters froze. Sensing something unnatural, something dangerous, Daniel grabbed a metal pipe, ready to protect her if they got too close. The first hunter reached the door, but Liara's power exploded like a wave of light, knocking him back. His scream echoed in the rain-soaked alley, while the others hesitated, unsure what force they were facing. Daniel moved with precision, striking the closest hunter with the pipe. Each hit buying them precious seconds. Liara's glow intensified, her voice rising in a melodic hum that sent shivers down the hunters' spines. "Run!" she shouted. They bolted through the back door into the narrow streets, Daniel supporting Liara as she propelled them forward with her energy bursts. The hunters pursued, but every step they took brought them closer to the edge of chaos, the city's labyrinth confusing them. A sudden explosion of light from Liara's hands lit the dark streets, blinding their pursuers temporarily. Daniel used the moment to leap over a low wall, landing on the wet asphalt with Liara in his arms. "Almost there," he yelled, his muscles straining. Liara's energy flared, creating a barrier of shimmering light that forced the hunters to scatter. Daniel felt the warmth of her power enveloping them both, protecting them in a cocoon of energy. It was unlike anything he had ever seen, something beautiful and terrifying at the same time. Finally, they reached a deserted building at the edge of the city. Panting, soaked but alive, Liara collapsed onto the floor, exhaustion overtaking her. Daniel knelt beside her, brushing the wet hair from her glowing face. "You saved us," she whispered. "Both of us." "No," Daniel said, shaking his head. "We saved each other." For a long moment, they just sat there, letting the sound of the storm outside mix with the pounding of their hearts. Then Liara reached out, placing her small hand on his, her glowing fingers intertwining with his. "You believed in me," she said softly, tears mixing with the rain on her cheeks. When no one else would, Daniel smiled. "I believe in you," he said, always. Liara's glow softened, a calm warmth replacing the tension of fear. "Then maybe this is the beginning of something new, not just survival, but life," Daniel nodded, feeling the truth in her words. They were no longer hunted, no longer just two strangers thrown together by fate. They were partners bound by trust, courage, and the unspoken promise to protect each other no matter what. Outside, the storm began to fade, the first rays of dawn cutting through the clouds, painting the city in shades of gold and silver, a symbol of hope, a new day, a new chance. Liara looked at Daniel, her glowing eyes reflecting the morning light. "Do you think we can really start over?" she asked, a hint of wonder in her voice. Daniel took a deep breath, standing, offering his hand to her. "We don't have to think. We just have to try," he said. Together, Liara grasped his hand firmly, rising beside him. Their shadows stretched long across the floor as they stepped toward the future. The hunters were still out there. Yes, but for the first time, neither of them feared them, because now they had each other, and nothing could take that away. A new beginning had begun, not just for Liara, not just for Daniel, but for the life they would build together, in a world that had seemed so dark, yet still held a spark of hope. And that spark, small and fragile as it was enough to light the way forward.